Hi, everyone. I'm Pallavi Balte. I'm an associate research scientist at Columbia University. And I lead the data harmonization efforts for the C4R study. Today, I'm just going to give a bit, I'm going to share my experience working with SAS Studio on BDC. And just to give you a little background, I have been working with SAS for more than 10 years now, but it's mostly with desktop SAS. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of how it is for me to working with SAS Studio compared to SAS 9.4. And just to begin my presentation, I'm going to give a brief overview of the C4R study for those who are not familiar with it. So the C4R study, which is collaborative cohorts for COVID-19 research, it's a national prospective study of adults comprising 14 established NHLBI and National Institute of Aging Health prospective cohort studies. So these 14 cohorts have collected clinical and data on clinical and subclinical diseases and risk factors starting as early as 1971. And so one of the main goal of the C4R study was to link this, what we call as pre-pandemic data, phenotype data with the COVID-19 diagnosis and look at the prognosis of people who got COVID-19 and also look at the long COVID in these people. Next slide, please. So as I said, there's like 14 cohort studies, and we also collaborate with NIH, NHLBI, and National Institute of Aging and National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke. So it's always tricky to share data between 14 cohorts, which are federally funded. And so to navigate this complex data sharing issues, we decided to work on BDC. And you can see on the next slide how our data sharing structure is. Can I have the next slide, please? Yes. So what we have here is we have created a C4R enclave on BDC, under which we have multiple projects, and each cohort is assigned its own project where they upload their data. The data is then transferred to a centralized harmonization project where all the harmonization of data across all the 14 cohorts happens. And this project is only accessible to the data coordinating and harmonization committee, which is at Columbia University. And when the data is completely processed, cleaned, processed, and ready for analysis or sharing with other researchers, we transfer this data back to each cohort. And we also have set of individual projects for people who would want to access this data and analyze this data, depending on the, they have to submit a paper proposal to the C4R PNP committee to get an approval for data analysis. But once they have their approval, they can analyze this data in their own project folder. Next slide, please. So as I said, I'm only going to talk about the data harmonization process in C4R and not going to talk about the analysis. But using SAS Studio, we have so far harmonized data across 14 cohorts in more than 47,000 participants. We have more around 300 variables, 20 to 300 variables per cohort, which are COVID related, which includes COVID infection, COVID test positivity, acute symptoms, post-acute symptoms, vaccination, hospitalization, and also serology data. And the pre-COVID variables, which were measured prior to 2020, are also harmonized across 14 cohorts. And we have anywhere between 100 to 1,000 variables per cohort. And those are all harmonized at the moment. And these data are accessible to the investigators all across the world with an approved analysis proposal and IRB approval from C4R. Next slide, please. Uh, so like I said, I've been using SAS for over 10 years now. My experience working with SAS Studio is that it's easily accessible and the interface is very user-friendly. If you have any experience working with SAS 9.4, you'll have no problem working in SAS Studio. One thing I noticed, which is I think not a feature of 9.4, is once you create an analysis in SAS Studio, you can save multiple SAS program under that one analysis, which I have found very useful since I'm dealing with data from 14 different cohorts and 4 different types of data. Uh, I uh, I have heard from new SAS users who are using SAS Studio on BDC that the program window prompts, SAS tasks, and SAS snippets are very useful for them as they don't have any previous experience with coding in SAS. For I myself don't use these features a lot because I am very familiar with it. And so what I have found is all the procedures are similar to SAS 9.4 desktop version. And one good thing for me is it works on Mac. The desktop version does not work on Mac. So uh, it has been very helpful for me because we've been working from home and I only have a Mac at home. Next slide, please. So some of the features that I have found are different than SAS 9.4, and I personally feel those are limitations for my work. Is the library path is case sensitive. It's not a big deal. You can just use insert path option to create a library, but if you're typing the library path, you have to be careful. Another feature I found, which is, so when I work on any data, when I clean it and when I create a new data set, I like to save it into a specific folder because I'm dealing with 14 different cohort studies. But I found that in SAS Studio, it's not possible to save a new data set under a specific folder. You have to save it under output files. And once you stop your analysis, then only you are able to move that output data set from the output files to your desired folder. And third thing I've found is the results cannot be appended, which in SAS 9.4 you can do. So in SAS Studio, what you have to do, if you have to go back to a previous analysis, you have to rerun the codes. It's just not saved unless you save it in a PDF format on the drive. And I also found like some of the errors are not highlighted in the log window. So you have to be really careful when you run your codes. You have to go into log window and check if everything works. Next slide, please. And this, since we are dealing here in our study with 14 different cohorts, we were very careful about how data is shared between each cohort and each project and C4R DCHC. So we looked into this deeply, and what we found was, although you can control the access to a particular project to the members, But once those members start using SAS Studio, they can technically download data from SAS Studio. So so it is possible to download data, but so we just have made it very explicitly known that under our data sharing agreement that the data download is prohibited at every level. So you just have to be careful and update your data sharing policy. Next slide, please. And what I have found is like the SAS team at Biodata Catalyst and Seven Bridges, they are excellent. They are very responsive to any questions you have. They get back to you as quickly as possible, and they also sometimes give one-on-one support to you if you have any questions. So that was my last slide, I guess. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer now.